What could you do to protect your pets if you're sick or injured? My product, Save My Pet ID tag, helps you ensure that your beloved pets are safe and well cared for, even when life isn't what you expect.
When a beloved pet dies, two emotions often surface: guilt and grief. Now, how can we deal with pet loss and grief in a more healthy way? For answers, we're turning to today's guest. She is a licensed clinical social worker and a certified life coach and a good person. She is the author of a new book. It is called I Miss You Already. Please welcome to our show, Nancy Gordon. Welcome, Nancy.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
The full title of your book is called I Miss You Already, Preparing for the Unbearable Loss of Your Pet. My cat is right next to me saying, I plan to live forever, but they don't, do they?
No. And I went through this experience of anticipatory grief. That's what this book is specifically about. And I found myself preparing 2 years ahead of time.
Wow.
Now, not preparing as if it's the last moment, but beginning to face the reality that Rainbow Bridge was in sight. I didn't know how close it would get, how fast it would get, but at some point, around 2 years before I lifted my first pet, actually, she was my service dog, Toaster, I began to see signs of her aging and debilitation and her slowing down. And I recognized the signs. And a lot of people at that point, they may see it for a second and then they don't want to face it. They don't think it's good.
Well, you touched upon a phrase that maybe might be new to some people, but it's something that we need to listen to what you're saying. Now I can't even say it for me, Nancy.
It's a tongue twister. Anticipatory grief.
Okay. So how do you define that?
That is the experience in the grief process, in the relationship process that we have with everyone, humans and pet, a time where we can see that at some point they are no longer going to be with us. And that is the anticipation. There we go. I told you it was a tongue twister. We're anticipating the impending loss. Now, the closer we are, the more intense that state of experience, I call it. It's not, Kubler-Ross talks about 5-stage of grief model.
And quickly, can you go through them real quick? Go ahead.
Yeah, there's the shock and denial. There's the depression and anger. There's the bargaining. There's the next one, the bargaining, and then there's the acceptance. So I use a different model. I experience life differently. So what I experienced as I was facing really losing both my parents within 5 years of each other and both my dogs within 9 months of each other.
Wow.
And what I experienced is there were more experiences rather than stages. And these experiences don't necessarily follow any linear path, which almost nothing in grief does, because every grief is its own journey and every relationship is different. So even if you lose both your parents, your experience of that loss is different because your relationship was different. Same with animals. There are often certain animals that come into your life that you have a really special relationship with, unlike other pets you've had.
That's where people say he or she's my heart dog or my heart cat, right?
Heart dog, right. Or I used to call Poster my doggy soulmate.
Doggy soulmate. Okay. All right.
Yeah, basically they're all referring to the same kind of experience. And so in anticipatory grief, the first experience you have is shock and denial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of people stop and get stuck. And what my work is all about is helping people embrace the understanding that this is how life is. It's going to happen. And the more that you embrace facing loss, find the courage and the support to face loss, the easier the grief is going to be post-loss. And as you mentioned, two of the feelings that follow almost 100% of the time is guilt and regret, and then the grief, the post-loss grief. And in that sense, what I've experienced and what I think is true about grief, anticipatory grief, which is one reason why it is such a window of opportunity of growth and healing while your pet is still with you. So,
I like that.
Yes. So both in those experiences, you actually, in anticipatory grief, grow through all the experiences of grief that you do post-loss. So in other words, even when after you've anticipated and you're in shock, let's say that's the first one, post-loss, you're still shocked. I remember when my mom passed. Now that was a 2-year journey of cancer with her daily. Wow. And I remember after she died, I was in shock again. I'm like,
even though you knew. Yeah.
I knew. It's like, it was almost a little surreal. That's a feeling of shock that comes with loss, whether it's anticipatory or post-loss. And so my belief is that the more we embrace the time we have in ways that are healing, in ways that can help prevent or at least lessen those feelings of guilt and regret post-loss, that makes the value and worth the risk, worth the work, worth the difficulty of facing anticipatory grief, because the benefit of that will come not only while your pet is with you, because you'll make different decisions than you would have made if you hadn't been consciously, intentionally letting go. And that's part of the grief.
And we're going to dive in a little deeper, but with us today is Nancy Gordon. She is an expert on pet loss and pet grief and human loss and human grief. And we're going to find out about her story too, because of the situation with her 2 service dogs and her parents. And she loves us and she loves our pets and she wants us to deal with grief in a very healthy way. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll dive in a little more deep. So everybody sit, stay. We'll be right back.
Pet Greens just donated a large amount of catnip and cat grass to Beagle Freedom Project, who recently just converted an animal testing lab into an animal sanctuary called Freedom Fields. Giving cats in a rescue access to cat grass and catnip can really help with their mood or acclimating if they came from outside to inside. And reducing a cat's anxiety really helps their chances of getting adopted. If you'd like to learn more about Pet Greens, or if you're a nonprofit and would like to request some cat grass for your sanctuary, please visit petgreens.com.
Welcome back to the Four-Legged Life Show. I'm your host, Arden Moore. We're speaking with a healer, a person that's here for our heart. And her name is Nancy Gordon. And you got a lot of titles after you. You're a licensed social worker. You've written many books. You are a certified life coach. So we are speaking with you because you have a new book out. It's called I Miss You Already, Preparing for the Unbearable Loss of Your Pet. And that's going to hit a little personal for you now, I guess, because you have had this situation where you've needed the help of a service dog and then a second one. Tell us a little bit about your backstory and how Toaster and Pink, that's the dog's names, came to be in your life.
I had a very traumatic and debilitating car accident. And for 6 years, I continued in my private practice as a therapist. And I found that I was not only not getting better, I was getting worse. And again, this was one of my first really personal experience of anticipatory grief, because I saw myself, what do I want to say, not dying, but facing loss of my livelihood, of my career, of who I knew myself to be, my finances, because I was becoming so disabled. I realized I couldn't continue working.
When did this accident happen? I know you know the date.
1992, yeah.
What date? What was the date?
July 11th.
Okay, and what happened specifically?
I was driving to go show a friend my new house I was building on a lake.
Yeah.
There was a 5-lane road, not a freeway, but just a 5-lane road. I was entering the middle lane to turn left. The 2 lanes beside me allowed a driver from a shopping center to go in front of them to turn left. And so we T-boned.
Oh, no. What
Yeah.
kind of car were you in?
I was in my Mazda MR2, a little sports car.
Little one. Yeah.
My car was totaled, and I was in such shock. When you have a trauma and you don't even necessarily realize you're in shock, in hindsight, I realized I was in shock. I was like, oh, wow, this is good. My car's totaled, but I'm fine. Well, I wasn't fine. And that was sort of the beginning of the end of my life as I knew it. The moment our metal collided, my path was forever changed.
Wow.
And
what type of physical injuries did you have?
I had severe whiplash and probably a mild traumatic brain injury because of that whiplash. That's a
jolt. That's a jolt. Yeah.
It was a jolt. And I've never been in a car accident like that. I've been in little fender benders up to that point, but I didn't realize the magnitude of that kind of crash. And so being kind of the type A person and making things happen and a go-getter, I just continued working until, So I learned over these decades, through my own healing, my own methodology surfaced with and through both my service dogs. They taught me a lot. Pink became three-legged at the age of 1. And so she taught me so much about coming to terms with my own disabilities. She got me off the couch and into both of them, into forging a new path for myself in my career, which Pink was just incredible about learning, teaching herself how to do what she used to do just differently.
So what kind of dog was Pink?
Pink and Toaster were full-bred Mexican hairless dogs. They're a breed that go back to, it's over 3,500 years to the ancient Aztecs and probably some other cultures like in Colombia, maybe China even.
How much did they weigh?
Pardon me?
How much did they weigh?
This was a toy size. There's 3 sizes, but for my use of them, they were known as spiritual, mystical healing dogs. And they were used for, quote, arthritis-like suffering because they're hairless or as with Toaster, she's a coated, but very little hair on. And so when you put their bodies next to your skin, they serve like a heating pad. So so when I discovered about this breed through a friend of mine who had Toaster's half brother, and Toaster was born.
I hope the other one wasn't called Slice of Bread. I'm just teasing.
No, that was Pink. Pink was born hairless and all pink. She looked like just like a pink sausage. So Anyway, where was I?
You said Toaster's half brother or somebody.
Yeah. So when I learned about this breed from my car accident for 6 years, I had a microwave neck wrap on my body for almost 24/7.
Wow,
So
that's
horrific pain, constant pain. So when I learned about their healing abilities of their warmth of their bodies they didn't cure muscle pain, but they relieved it like a heating pad, microwave heating pad. So when I learned about that, I said, I'm going to get a small toy-sized Sholo, put her around my neck and call her my 24/7, no microwave hot dog. And that's how we all talked about her. And then Animal Planet found out about our story when they were looking for a pregnant dog, and Toaster at the age of 3 was pregnant, and they discovered our story and they found so much more of a story than just a pregnant dog. So they filmed a 20-minute documentary on us.
Nice. That's very nice.
Yeah.
So you know that Toaster and Pink, they weren't able to live forever. How long did they live to be? And with your professional expertise and all that, it's still a jolt.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Toaster was 17.
Mm-hmm.
Pink, 9 months later than Toaster, was 14. That was her daughter. As I said, she became 3-legged at the age of 1. So
was there a cancer or something? What did she have that
Pink
made her? Yeah.
Well, she had a severe food allergies most of her life, I think from about age 5. And so she got to a point where she was allergic to even the food that she'd been eating for 7 years. And then the decline of what to do with her. So
which leg was it?
It was her hind left leg.
Okay. So you're here, you've lost your parents, you've lost your service dogs, you've gotten a horrible accident. Why are you a nice person?
Well, my mom taught me many things that are in the methodology I created, that it's called 7 Powerful Practices to Manage Your Mind and Heal Your Heart. And one of those practices is about seeing the glass half full and being grateful. And I've always had a value of making lemonade out of lemons. That was another one of her sayings as I was growing up. So I've always been successful in looking at what can I learn from this experience? How can I grow from this experience rather than let it take me down?
Like that.
Yeah. So that's been my orientation through my whole life, really. And it's always been my nature to help others. That's why I went into the field I did at a very young age. And I think that it's part of my path to help others. And what became really clear to me after my car accident and my focus from that point on, not just healing physically, but healing in ways that would allow me to do what I'm here to do, which I think is help people. I discovered, well, part of how I do that is that I go through that fire myself and then rise from the ashes like a phoenix, and then I teach others. So
I like that.
I get a lot of joy and satisfaction with my clients because they get me, and I get them, and they see how I've helped them.
And you also have reached out to pet professionals. And can you talk a little bit about pet sitters, dog walkers? Because some of them have regular clients and they feel like they're the aunt, the uncle for that dog, that cat. They build a connection, they build a friendship, and then the pet passes away. What advice, what can you do to help those folks deal with grief?
Yes. Well, my focus on my business now is more about consulting and training and educating animal-related businesses about how to navigate anticipatory grief and post-loss grief, and understand how very much the loss of a dog that they're caring for, whether they're a veterinarian or whether they're a pet walker, affects them too. And so if they don't have a process and an avenue and a support system to recognize all that, then it makes it very difficult to, what do I want to say, to heal themselves in ways that make them able to maintain their practice. It's like when you're a therapist, if you don't deal with your own emotional issues, you can't help other people very well.
So if someone's a pet sitter and they've worked with this dog, a client's dog for many years, and they knew the dog was on the decline, and then the family goes, well, we don't need you to come over anymore because I'm going to say Spirit. Isn't that a good name? Spirit is no longer here. What can you help? What's a couple of tips you can give that pet sitter to deal with, this is not my dog, but I love this dog?
Yeah. Well, one of the most important tools that we all have the power to use about healing grief is to share it, is to talk about it. And I would even go as far as to say it could be very healing depending on their relationship with the owners of the pet, that they can express, I'm sad too. I loved Spirit and Spirit, blah, 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 whatever they want to say about their experience in their relationship. And I'm going to miss you. I really enjoyed working for you. I mean, just to say what's true, what's authentic. How did this affect them? And in some ways, I think most people would hear that as honoring not only the dog, but them as pet parents. And it honors the relationship. And that's part of how you do closure.
Exactly. Because if you don't do that, what's some tolls physically and maybe psychologically that could be at risk?
Oh, yeah. I believe unhealed grief puts a lock on your heart. And in doing that, you end up trying to get needs met in a lot of unhealthy ways. You may become isolating. You may become depressed and not recognize that there's a connection between your grief and your depression. And so sometimes people turn to alcohol and drugs to feel better. There's high blood pressure. There's all kinds of conditions that we experience health-wise, physically and emotionally, that I think are related to unhealed grief.
Very well put.
May not be the only factor in that condition, but I can tell you it's one of the primary ones. But people don't understand that. That's what I talk about in this book, I Miss You Already, is the benefits of facing grief, how to face it, and the consequences if you don't face it.
I like it. This is powerful. Hey, everyone, we're speaking with Nancy Gordon. This is a book I want you to get. I Miss You Already. And it deals with how to deal with grief. In my household, I have the furry Brady Bunch, including 20-year-old black cat Mikey, who sometimes gets lost in the corner of the kitchen because of dementia. And we just say, it's okay, Mikey, we're here. And sometimes he gets in such a deep snooze that we're like, please tell me you're breathing. I know he is not going to be Methuselah. I know he's not going to live to be 90 years old. That's the rational side. But it is going to be sad the day he goes up to the Rainbow Bridge.
Yes. And there's a whole lot of preparation in anticipatory grief that does include that final stage of impending loss where you may be in a position to make a decision about euthanasia or not. Mm-hmm. That's another piece in my book that I talk about because I developed with Toaster and Pink sort of a recipe, a methodology of how to go through that process. For example, toasters, I coined the term and trademarked it because it's such a full term. Instead of putting down your pet, I call it lifting up.
Oh, okay.
So lifting up is the phrase. And so I developed sort of how you go about making that lifting up an experience for you, anyone else involved with your pet, and your pet is healing instead of traumatic. It's celebratory at the same time, honoring the sadness. So, for example, Toasters, I named Toasters Lifting Up, Toasters Reese's Peanut Butter Lifting Up, because she loved to get into chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Had her stomach pumped, I think, at least 3 times in her life. I'm pretty sure it was 3, maybe not more, but 3, because she managed her way around finding it sometimes. So I had her internist, who is also a mobile vet, come to the house. We planned it. I planned it 3 weeks ahead, so that those 3 weeks, I also planned how I was going to spend time with Toaster. Some of that involved not having Pink be with us. That gave Toaster her own special time, because Pink was a attention hog, and Toaster let her, being her mother, Toaster let her be an attention hog. And so I took Toaster as my service dog to a movie, just for the 2 of us in those 3 weeks. She loved it, sat around my neck in the theater and things like that. So I help people figure out what those kinds of things are in their relationship, so that then they can create with whatever time they want. For me, it was like 3 weeks. Toaster was not on her deathbed. So I had those 3 weeks to safely say goodbye.
I'm glad you did that. Yeah, so we do little things for Mikey now, and he's a good man. He's a good man. So I can't believe the time goes by so fast. I am so honored to have you as our guest today. We're speaking with Nancy Gordon. We don't live forever. Our pets don't live forever. But I will tell you this, Nancy, every day I'm with my dogs and my cats, they make me a better human.
Yes. You're present with them. That's an important piece of the anticipatory grief stage.
Thanks so much for making our tails wag by watching this guest interview from Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life. Make sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of our Four-Legged Life content.